Good afternoon, YouTube, and welcome to my very first video ever. And today we are working on a Toro Recycler 22-inch push lawnmower. Customer of mine, that's actually mine over there, ironically, is complaining that they just got this used from another family member and it will not start. So I have not done anything. I haven't looked into anything. But I have a good culprit that it's probably just simply a carburetor issue, because it was stored over winter. Here in Ohio, winter temperatures can get kind of flaky all over the place, and it was stored with fuel in it all winter long. So first things first, check, make sure obviously it's got oil before you try to do anything, and it's right at the bottom of the level. So we're okay with that. I would say check your fuel. I know it's got fuel in it, but again, we don't know the condition of that fuel. So with these Toros, you just simply push the primer bulb 3 times, give it a couple yanks, and she should fire up. Started a little rough. Ironically, it actually did start, but according to the gentleman I got it from, he could not get it to start. So I'm still going to go ahead and tear apart this carburetor just to be safe. That way we know it's taken care of, and I'm just going to charge him for a carburetor rebuild. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I do know that the blade is bent that's underneath, so we will be ordering a new blade for it. We'll make sure that it gets sharpened and balanced as well. I'm going to do a full tune-up on this, and this is all things that I will be recording for you guys, so that way the average Joe can understand what's going on when it comes to how to work on a lawnmower, what you're looking for, basically things to keep an eye out for. So you notice the personal pace system is extremely loose, so I'm going to take care of that as well. So I've already mentioned all of these things to him. I knew going into it that a lot of the stuff wasn't correct to begin with, so he agreed upon doing the full rebuild of the carburetor. We're going to do a proper tune-up, which is an air filter. Just to give you an idea of the air filter on these units, let me turn this around so you can get a better idea of how it works. Now that we have you turned around and you can see a little bit better about what's going on, again, the fuel stored in it all winter, so my bet is with it being in my vehicle for a while, it probably jarred around some of the loose gunk that's in the bottom of this thing. So we're still, like I said, we're still going to tear this apart. That's your carburetor, but some other maintenance key pieces, especially to air-cooled engines, is good oil. Don't use really cheap low-grade oil, but also making sure that they can breathe. So when you take apart your air filter and all you see is oil and gunk all over it, and oil's caked inside, which I know you probably can't see, but unfortunately this is the lifeline to pretty much any air-cooled engine. So that, with that being said, that's what we're going to replace. Is we're going to do a full tune-up. We're going to work on the carburetor. We're going to replace the air filter. We're going to do absolutely everything we can to get this thing in tip-top shape for him. Like I said, also a new belt, or not a new belt, but a new blade underneath it. We're going to get it balanced and sharpened as well, because just because you buy a new blade does not mean it's balanced, or does not mean it comes sharpened from the factory. So always make sure you have a blade balanced and sharpened. Okay, now what we need to do to get the carburetor off is you're simply just going to need a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. The larger the handle, the better off it's going to be, easier for you to get on and off. but there's two small bolts and it's really close to your muffler. I suggest taking the manifold off. It's easier than trying to get to the back bolt and nut that's on the back side of your carburetor, which is actually back up in here. So when it's mounted on there, you really don't have great access to it. The reason also why is you get better access to your linkage and your fuel hoses. So I always suggest marking which linkage that was going into originally, so when you go to put it back together, you have a mark or a scribe mark that's on there. That way you know exactly what you're doing. Also, there is a spring that's going to be on the back side of this as well, but we'll get to that in a minute. So first things first, go ahead and remove the two fuel lines. With the bottom fuel line, that's going to be obviously your intake from your gas tank. Bring me the tool. So what you're going to need with this is some kind of channel locks to crimp your fuel line, because obviously you're going to get fuel to leak out of your gas tank if you didn't empty your gas tank. And then you need a set of pliers to be able to get the actual clamp off. What, Kenneth? So
how about I have, can I have blue one? Can I have blue?
yes.
Thank you, Daddy.
You're very welcome.
I do have Daddy.
Okay, so we got the throttle linkage and the governor spring removed. We've got our air intake tube removed as well. We've got our fuel line crimped off, so that way we're not going to leak fuel all over the place. And now we have a free carburetor. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up on our bench behind us, which is actually some trash can containers, lids. We're just going to work on that. That way you can see exactly what's going on when we tear this apart. And what we're going to do to clean it. So let me turn off the camera. We're going to get reset back up for you to see what's going on, and we will be right back. Okay guys, now that we got you set back up, couple things. I typically will try to get as much of this fuel out, but unfortunately it already dumped out. I try to keep it in the bowl to show, especially for you guys, but what I'm going to do is we're going to use some carburetor cleaner first before we do anything, and we're actually going to use a plastic or nylon brush. I want to knock a lot of the major junk away first before we even do anything to the inside, because the last thing I want to do is get this semi-remotely clean and then try to put it back together. Okay. Got the little helper out here with me today. His name's Ryan, or Kenneth. Kenneth is his first name, Ryan's his middle name, so he goes by both names. But I'm just getting the gunk, the major gunk off of this. The biggest thing with carburetor cleaner is try to keep it off the rubber parts as much as possible, because it will eat away to the rubber, cause it to swell up, don't want to work right. So you see, it's already looking a lot better than it was. You're going to need a 3/8 and 7/16 wrench to be able to get the nut and bolt broke free. I already broke them free, but I did not take it apart yet. And this is going to remove the carburetor from the manifold directly from itself. This way you can get access. Nope, that one's gonna make me a liar. Yep. What you doing over there, little one? Nothing. Okay. So the key to this is you want to be as gentle as you can trying to disassemble it because of the gaskets. I do not have a gasket rebuild kit. Simply, I'm just going to tear it apart, clean some internals, and we're going to put it back together. It's not too complicated. Plastic shield, again, just a simple number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. We'll tear this apart. Now be gentle. Rubber, plastic tube. It's a Venturi tube. Actually, it regulates the air. We're going to take the bowl off next. I believe it is a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to reach in front of you, unfortunately. We're going to grab our 1/2 inch wrench. This is actually one of your jets. And that's why it's got a stamp 169 on the bottom. That stamp represents what jetting is inside it, and inside here, kind of hard to see, is a little hole, and that hole what allows gas to go into the middle and get shot up through the middle. So we got to make sure that's clean.
Daddy, look at me. Look at me.
So inside the bottom of the bowl, the fuel looks a little on the dirty side. It's not terrible, but there's a lot of little black specks, and those black specks is what's going to gum up this carburetor and make it not run right. So obviously your plastic float. So we're going to take off our gasket, and as gentle as you can get it off.
What?
Because you do not want to damage this. And again, the carburetor cleaner does not go good with rubber parts, so that's why you want to get that as far away as you can. And then you got a pin. It's going to take fingers don't want to work, so a small set of like needle nose pliers, something like that. Don't take a lot of force, it's just getting your fingers in there to get it out. So it's going to be your pin to hold that on, and then your float, and then on the float will be, and this is actually aluminum, some of them are plastic, some will have a black cap, and then also there's going to be a main jet that we need to clear out that's going to be through here as well. So this is about as far as you really honestly need to take a carburetor apart to get one completely clean. You can go with an actual parts cleaner kit, soak everything inside there and take this completely apart. It's really not needed unless your carburetor is really gummed up and it's really nasty. I also have an ultrasonic cleaner that I will also put the carburetor parts cleaner in as well. Stop. You can't, because I'll show you what he did. So the little guy accidentally grabbed a hold of the clamp that was holding the fuel line, and it leaked fuel all over the place. Awesome. Gotta love the little ones. I know they want to help. So here, you want another tool? I'll give you this one. There you go. So like I was saying earlier, the biggest thing with this is just getting it clean, clear out all the passageways. Any carburetor and choke cleaner will work perfectly fine and dandy for this. We're going to start, there's no right or wrong direction on which way you want to go with this, but we're going to start, and you're going to see it shot out this tube here, so that tells me that's clear. We're going to start with this one, and it's coming out here, which tells me that's clear. The only other one that you got to worry about is going to be the center, which goes, you might be able to see it, it's going to be that red tube right there.
Daddy, the one is so hard.
Okay.
I want blue.
You want a blue one? Okay, here, I'll give you this one.
No, that's off.
Here, you want this one now? It's easy. Okay. So with this one, you're just gonna spray in it and see if it comes out the center, which it obviously is, being that how much liquid is running through it. So we know the main passages is clear and free and ready to go. So we're just tearing this apart, giving it a simple cleaning. Now the key to this is all dirty. I'm not reassembling this on this paper towel. So I actually have a microfiber cloth that is relatively clean. So I am going to put this in place of that. So we know that that's clean. Then obviously we're going to give this bowl a cleaning. So you notice, just by rinsing it, how much dirt and garbage, and also look, notice the color. The color's that yellowy, varnishy tint. So that is what will mess up a carburetor in a heartbeat. So again, plastic brush or nylon brush. You don't have to be crazy gentle, but what I'm doing is just trying to get inside here, clean up as much as I can. You notice that liquid just got a lot darker. So set this over here. We're gonna rinse it again. Okay, so that's good and clean. So don't really have to worry about your float. It's plastic. I mean, you can rinse it down if you wanted with the carburetor cleaner. I'm not suggesting it. It can cause issues because it is plastic. The plastic can soak in the carburetor cleaner, which then will also make it swell up. So with this, there's, like I was saying, there's 2 holes, one on each side. You have to make sure that that's clear. I can actually see through it. Some people will go ahead and shoot some carburetor cleaner through it. And you notice it's coming out both ends and the top at the same time. So that tells me this is clean and ready to be reassembled. Everything else that we had taken off, besides your fuel shut off, we're going to make sure the tip of that is nice and clean, rinse the whole thing off. So now we have all the key components to our carburetor cleaned. So what we need to do now is start reassembling. So what you do here is you start by taking your needle and float in a... Okay, now the next step, we're going to put our gasket back on. Only going to go on one way. Of course, we still got some dirt on the outside of it. That's perfectly fine. So we're going to put our gasket back on. You can put them up here if you want. Make sure our bowl's still nice and clean, which it hasn't gone anywhere. So we're going to put our bowl back on. Make sure you look around. Make sure that you're not pinching anything. Nothing looks out of the ordinary. And then you're going to take your main jet and screw it into the bottom. And then your your 1/2 inch wrench, and just go down and gently snug it up. You don't have to go crazy tight. It just needs to be snug, so that way it seals up. Nothing's gonna leak on you. You should be fantastic. So now we've got a completely cleaned carburetor. The key is, I'm not cleaning the outside to make it look pretty. I only care about function, which that's why I clean it the way that I clean it. The next step is we're going to mate this back to our intake. So you have a couple different ways to remember. So the engine is this way, just like so. So it's going to mount that way. Your carburetor will mount just like so. So if you accidentally mount it upside down, so when you go to remount it, it's not going to mount correctly to your engine. So make sure you pay attention to how it mounts, which is just like so. This is the side of the engine. Like, let's use this can. This can is your engine. It mounts like this. So when it mounts that way, you have to make sure the bowl is down. So it's going to go just like so. So what you do is You're going to take the one with the little bracket. That bracket is, again, for your governor spring. So that's going to be on the inside of your engine. Take one of your lock nuts. Start it by hand. Get it close.
Where did you go?
And then take the other two. Bolt and locking nut. And start it on this side. So again, same concept with these. They are two different sizes, so you need a 3/8 and a half, or sorry, 3/8 and a 7/16 wrench. And you are going to tighten these down. You don't have to go crazy with this. All you need to do is just make it so that they are airtight. Unfortunately, if you do have a leak, if you don't get these snug, you will cause an intake leak, which will cause your motor to run lean. It's about impossible to honestly fix a lean condition based on an intake leak, but with lawnmower engines, it's not really that common. It's more of an issue with your full-size cars, that kind of stuff. What you over there gibbering about? So again, you're not going crazy. You're not going crazy tight. You just want to make sure they're nice and snug. You're not going like uber crazy. Actually, and I just noticed this. This needs to be facing outwards. So I got to loosen this side up to fix that bracket. This is why you check things as you go, because you can very easily, Kenneth, you're hitting the camera.
Hey, Daddy. Look at me.
I see.
Hey, Daddy.
So bend that back out and tighten it back up.
Daddy, your phone.
So we went ahead and reassembled, put the plastic piece back on. So now I'm just going through, doing a little bit more tidying up with some of this dirt, making it a little bit more presentable. So that's how you rebuild your carburetor for a Toro. So what we're going to do, we'll flip the camera back around, we'll get you reset back up, and then we're going to reassemble all of this back on our lawnmower that's sitting here behind us. Okay, now that we got you reset back up, we're going to reassemble this back to our lawnmower. So just go basically in the reverse order that you took it apart. So what we're going to start with is I'm going to do the fuel lines first. That way we don't have to worry about these as much. They're kind of the easiest thing to work with, but they're also probably the hardest things to work with because they are plastic, and unfortunately things sometimes, or sorry, they're old rubber, but sometimes rubber does not like to play very well. So you got two hoses, your lower, which is your main, then you got a return that goes up top, or it's more of a vent than it is anything else. So that's those two. Then you've got two linkages. One's an actual throttle, one's your spring. One's your governor spring. So we'll do the spring first. It's a little bit more I'll say it's not complicated, it's just, it's in a bad spot. And then the throttle linkage goes back on your scribe mark. Well, this ain't gonna go in very well. It doesn't like to play. So, looks like we got a couple things. The governor spring fell back off, so I'm going to reach back up in there, reattach that. Then also our fuel vent popped off. So that's everything linkage wise. So your upper vent, your fuel, main fuel that goes in, throttle linkage, governor spring. Then the last bit is to reattach our intake to the block, which just takes again a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. So the bottom one's a lot easier to get to, so I'm going to suggest you start with the bottom one. Actually, no, I think you have to work with the top one out, because you have to work around the exhaust, unless you want to take the exhaust manifold completely off, which I did not. It can be done. It's just a little bit of a pain to get up in there. Once you get it started, I'll tell you stop. Go to the other one. Go and get it started. Just go down, cinch them up until they're nice and tight. Again, they don't have to be crazy tight. You're just cinching them up to make sure that you don't have any air leaks. Obviously, if you didn't have any fuel in, now would be the time to go and add some fuel. I am going to go ahead and reinstall our old air filter for the time being. I do have some replacement parts on order, so once we get the rest of the parts in, we will finish off this video on how to do a fuel or a full tune-up. The air filter is only going to go on one way, so the hole goes up against the carburetor just like so. So if you try to put it in backwards, it's fully sealed off. It will not go up in that way, so make sure the hole faces up and in. And I put that on backwards, and it goes in crooked. That's why you see these notches on the plastic. And then you put it in and you rotate it till it clips in. Alright, YouTube, and welcome back. We are on day number 2. Rebuilt the carburetor, and we're having issues now where we cannot get that float bowl to push up on the needle and seat that correctly, so it keeps leaking fuel. How we know that is if you let it sit overnight with some fuel in it, you're going to check your dipstick, and it's going to show high levels. And also, if you smell it, it usually smells like gasoline. So I've tried rebuilding it off camera a second time and a third time, and I am not getting any luck with getting the needle to seat up underneath it. So today's video, we are going to go ahead and do our entire tune-up, which technically I've already done, but I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. A new spark plug, new air filter, new blade, oil change, and then we will go ahead and swap out our replacement carburetor as well. Tools for the job, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. 3/8 ratchet and an extension. That is all you need to get underneath this to do an oil change. There's a drain plug in there that takes just your standard 3/8 ratchet that'll fit. I use an extension to get up in there a little bit easier, make life easier. That's that. You can tip it over and on its side and kind of upside down. I would suggest, if you do that, to drain your fuel before you actually tip your lawnmower over, but we're not going to do it that way. So since we're doing all of this preventative maintenance, we're going to go ahead and let the drain oil first. So like I said, get up underneath here and you'll see that on the side with the chute, up underneath in the center, right where the motor is, there's going to be a drain plug. Break it free, and then use your extension. You can go by hand, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Well, some of it missed, but oh well. So you notice, got some on my hands, kind of hard to see, but notice how clear that is. And if you see it on the trash can here, how it's milky, you can tell it's got multiple colors on it. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me see if I can zoom in so you guys can see this a little better. Actually, let's do this. Don't think you can see it, but drain pan. Nope, you can't see it either. You're just gonna take my word for it. Get your reset back up. So while that's draining, and we have our tools out, I'll clean that up later. Gonna take a socket wrench or just a standard deep 13/16 socket, unplug your spark plug boot. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Go ahead and take that all the way off. Now this one is new, so I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this. But to give you an idea of comparison between the two, they're almost identically the same. This is actually an E3.10, but it's got a bunch of rust, and actually the inside looks pretty rough. This one I had running once. So what we're putting in is a NGK BR2LM. That was BR2LM by NGK. That's what I always put in all my equipment. NGK replacements. It was $2 and I think 13 cents on Amazon. Pretty cheap investment. So hand tighten it back in. Set your wrench to tighten. The key to the spark plug is to not over tighten them. But you want it tight enough. So because it's an aluminum block, it's an aluminum head, so you tighten it down till this crush washer right here sinks up against the cylinder head, and then snug it so it's real tight and firm. Don't have to go crazy on it. Same thing with the air filter. I've already replaced it, but we're gonna go ahead and do it again anyway, just to be on the safe side so you can see. So let's get you around to the other side. So with the air filter, it even tells you rotate to remove, so you'll feel it click. and it pops off. So when it pops off, you're going to take the old one out. So you can see the difference between the two. This is the old one, this is the new one. So this one's going back in. It only goes in one way. If you try putting this in upside down or backwards, it won't let you. So you're going to notice one side is curved, the other side is flat. The curved side will always face outwards. You put this back on, and then rotate till it clicks. Very simple, very easy. I'm gonna take this back off because we have to do our carburetor replacement. But for the time being, we'll set that over here to the side to get it out of our way. Next step, we're gonna put our oil back in and put our drain plug back in. So we'll go back to the other side. Put you over here this time. Gotta find it because it fell. The drain plug is actually just a little cap. Nothing fancy, just a little cap, square head on it. And like I was saying, an extension fits perfectly on it. Most people are not aware that an extension will fit your drain plug. Take your same 3/8 ratchet. If you don't drop it first. I always suggest starting anything by hand if at all possible. The reason why is you can feel if something binds up, something gets tight. You'll know if something doesn't go in smoothly. If it goes in freely, it will just go screw right in with no problem. So I go hand tight till I can get it pretty snug. Put your extension back on. And you don't have to go crazy with it. So you see, then go gung-ho crazy and torquing it down to some massive pressure. Just something simple and easy is all you need to do. So this is a Tecumseh motor, and all Tecumsehs and Briggs & Stratton, I believe Honda are the same way. They all suggest SAE 30. The problem with SAE 30 is finding it in a reasonable price. So if you don't have or know where to... Okay. Sorry, technical difficulties. So, using my cell phone now to record, my camera decided that the batteries were just dead. So, as I was saying, your lawnmowers are typically Honda engines, Tecumseh engines, or Briggs & Stratton. And most of them are SAE 30, or what they suggest from the manufacturer. You can run 10W30s. I've seen people run that. You can run 10W40s. People run anything and everything that you can think of. I try to get as close to the original manufacturer as possible. With that being said, you see that I'm running the Harvest King SAE 30. That is Rural King's branded oils. The lifeline to a small engine. Oops. Let's try this again since you fell. I caught you. So the lifeline to a small engine is two things. They're air cooled, so the lifeline is how well it breathes air in and how cool it can run based on oil. Keeping these replaced at a few dollars a piece, I would suggest, depending on how rough you are, like how much you use it, how big your lawns are, you probably should be replacing this I would say twice a year. Realistically, I personally suggest the same with your oils as well. There are hours that you could go by based on that. For maintenance, that's up to you on if you want to keep hours. But me, I'm on about a quarter of an acre, maybe a little under a fifth of an acre. I don't have a whole lot. My front yard's only 1,000 square feet. I don't use it a ton. So I do one air filter. I will check it throughout the year to make sure it's remotely clean. This is in pretty rough shape because you can see how rough, like dark it is. That means it had some oil issues. But the oil, same thing, keep an eye on it. I will check my oil every time I go to start it up to make sure that it has oil, because the last thing you want to do is start an engine without any oil in it. They don't hold a whole lot to begin with, so oil and airflow are your friends. So with that being said, we're going to take your dipstick out, set it down. These hold a little short of a quart, if I remember correctly. Problem with buying 5 quarts or 1.25 gallons is this big bulky container. So unfortunately, you kind of have to guess. So go slow, a little at a time. Take a clean rag, give that a minute to settle, wipe off your dipstick, put it in, and run it all the way down until it closes, because you will actually get a different reading from it just sitting on top and being fully closed. So check it. Actually, that does not look terrible. I want to check it again. Now, according to this, I am up to about right here, and the fill line is right there. So I'm a little over fill. So what I always suggest, and what I do with all my lawnmowers and anybody else's that I work on, is unplug your spark plug boot to make sure that it's not going to start, and turn this over by hand a few times. And what we're doing is we're working that oil in to make sure that everything inside is working, but it also helps settle the oil inside your crankshaft. Let it set. Same thing. Go ahead, tighten it all the way down, pull it back out. And according to this, we are just over fill. So I'm okay with that. We'll check that out here in a little bit after we start it, again, to make sure that it stays where it needs to. So the last bit that we have left to do with this lawnmower is an new carburetor. So let me get you guys reset back up. Different angle on the back side, which is where the carburetor is, and we will put a new carburetor on it and give it a test. Okay, just like last time, start with the Phillips head screwdriver number 2. Take off 2 bolts. And set that down. Now I believe this should be out of fuel. It's actually not. It may have actually seated, but I've already ordered the part, so we're going to replace it. So since we know that there's fuel in it, vice grips on the fuel line and crimp that down. That will prevent any fuel, well, I don't say any, but that will prevent most fuel from falling out of your carburetor or from your gas tank. So there's 2 connections. There's one with a spring, and then there's one at the top. The one up top is your throttle, the back one is your governor. This vice grips did not work very well, so we leaked fuel everywhere. See, like I said before, just because you crimped it doesn't mean it's actually going to hold. And this is one of those situations. Hey, we all make mistakes. So, get that set up so it's not leaking. And then do your throttle, maybe. This fuel line is driving me up a wall. There we go. Third time's a charm, right? So remember our scribe mark that we marked from earlier, taking the carburetor apart. You're going to remember that same spot as before. So you're going to need your 7/16 wrench to take the nut off both sides of the carburetor. You can actually hold it with your thumb if you want. You can get a 3/8 wrench and hold it down if you want. That's up to you. So now you have your intake separated from your carburetor. Last step for disassembly is taking off your plastic housing that holds the air filter. And again, that's just a standard number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Nothing simple or nothing complicated. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And that is your disassembled carburetor. So, take out your new one. the reason why this one is not working very well, going to be hard to see. Let's see if it'll zoom in and check. But this seam, it's actually split on your bowl or your primer bulb, and that makes it hard to start. So you're going to basically go in reverse, just exactly how you took it off. Biggest thing is making sure your gasket stays on the intake, or if it's on your carburetor, you're going to need a replacement gasket. But in this case, the gasket's still on the intake. I knew it was good before we started this project, so we are good. So remember, studs face up, carburetor goes on like so. Now, the key to this is your governor, and I know I missed this on the last part. Your governor arm needs to face up. I had it kind of 45'd out, and that causes some issues, so you want to make sure that it is up, vertical. So both sets of screws or bolts and nuts get installed. Same 7/16 wrench. This one's probably going to need the 3/8 as well to make sure that it gets nice and tight. That side. Again, these do not have to be super tight, but they do need to be snug to make sure that you are not going to have any kind of leaks around that gasket. So now you're going to go in reverse of how we took this off. So I'm going to start with your throttle cable first. And it is going to go in the same hole. Okay, or just take the whole throttle cable assembly off. That works too. Sorry, I know I'm blocking the camera, but there's only so much I can do when I can't see. So, throttle linkage, governor with your spring, attach your fuel line. Make sure you get the retention spring, which will hold the clip. That'll hold your fuel line in place. Then we are going to put in our plastic cover. On the back of the cover is a gasket. It goes inside the groove, so make sure that that stays in place. Put that on. Take your number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Get it close. Don't have to snug it all the way yet, because you want to make sure you do the other side as well. Once you get started, then go ahead and down, snug it on up. Last vent. And then the intake gets mounted. Now, again, just like I said before, I suggest doing the top first. Getting it started, and then go and start your bottom, and then now once you got both of them in and started, go ahead and tighten them down. Now, one thing I did forget to mention is the spark plug boot. So when you go to push that spark plug boot back on your spark plug, make sure you hear and feel a solid click when you're pushing it in. So now that we got all that set, take our new air filter and housing and reassemble. It's that easy. So now we've got a lawnmower with a full tune-up, new spark plug, new air filter. In this case, we have a new carburetor. New carburetor was pretty much a necessity in this situation because of the neglect that was done to it prior. But normally, air filter, oil, spark plug, and making sure you have a blade that is balanced and sharpened. That's pretty much all you need to do to get your lawnmower ready for the season.